So there you are again, sat debating with yourself the pros and cons of buying versus renting in 2021. Should you rent so that way you have the freedom to change locations easily and invest your money elsewhere? Or should you take that same rent payment and buy a home so that way you're not just throwing your money away and you're building equity? I know, this is a tough question to answer. And that's why in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the debate between buying and renting a home in 2021. And I'll be giving you my perspective as someone who's made a living selling homes as a real estate agent, and I'll be telling you what most real estate agents won't. By the end of this video, you're going to have the pros and cons of both buying and renting, as well as 3 tools that are going to help you make the best decision possible. Okay, so let's first go through the different pros and cons, both with renting as well as buying. One of the best pros for renting is you are super mobile, meaning if you don't want to stay in one place for very long, you have the freedom and flexibility to do so in a much easier and a much cheaper way. Because when you're renting, once your lease ends, you have the freedom to move to another state, another city, another apartment, another home, versus when you've bought a home, you're gonna have to pay all these fees to sell the house. One of the other major benefits to renting is you're not gonna have to deal with maintenance expenses or any of the hassle that comes along with that. If you're in an apartment or a home that you're renting and the pipe breaks or something happens and you need to get something fixed, you just call the landlord, they'll come over, they'll take care of it, they cover all the expenses, and it's all taken care of for you. So if you don't like that hassle factor of dealing with maintenance and dealing with things that break, well then renting can be a great option. Another great benefit is that you're not gonna have as many expenses up front to get into a place to live. If you're renting an apartment and have a great credit score, there are some apartments that won't even require you to put down a deposit because of your credit score. Now, some places will charge you a full first month's rent as a deposit, but even still, if you're paying say $2,000 or $1,500 as a deposit, it's much less, significantly less than the expenses that come with buying a home. And the last benefit to renting that I'll mention is you can get by with a lower credit score. Because with buying a home, your credit score is largely going to determine your interest rate and cost you a lot of money if you have a low one. But with renting an apartment or a home, the only thing that having a lower score is going to impact is your deposit that you're going to have to put down when you rent the property. But in most cases, that's a refundable deposit as long as you don't damage the property. And so it doesn't really have much of an impact anyway because you're going to be getting that money back, assuming you're a good tenant. Now let's get into some of the cons of renting, because I promise you, it is not all sunshine and roses, not by any means. One of the biggest cons, and this is the thing everyone talks about, is that you're just throwing your money away. What they mean by that is you're not building equity. None of the money you're spending on rent is going towards anything, really. It's just like an expense like your phone bill or your electric bill. Once you pay it, that money is gone. You don't get any of that back, and you're really just using the property as a utility, something that's expendable, and it's 100% not seen as an investment. Another huge downside is you're most likely going to be sharing walls with other people. Unless you have a single family detached home that you're renting. If you're in an apartment or a townhome, a condo, you're going to share walls with people, and you're going to have a lot of noise and all the inconveniences that come with living so close to other people. And this may be a big factor depending on who you are and what your style is, but if you're renting, you're not going to be able to customize the home as much as you would like. If your favorite color is pink and you just want to paint your room pink, you're not going to be able to do that unless of course you're okay with losing your deposit or spending the money yourself to repaint the walls back to the original color. Because when you're renting, you have much less control of the customization of your home. You can't go knocking out walls and doing any remodels, and of course you're not going to want to because that would just be wasted money anyway, because you're not going to get any of the benefits of that when it's time to move out. And the last con that I'll mention is your landlord will definitely be increasing your rent as time goes on and as the market value of the property that you're living in increases. And that's because if you're living in a property for 5 years, 5 years ago the property was valued at one price, and most likely now it's a higher price. And that means the landlord is going to want to make more money for you for renting the property. Even though you rented it at $1,000 a month 5 years ago, he's probably going to want you to be paying somewhere around $250 more per month for that same property. Now let's make the case for buying a home. Again, going back to the thing that everyone talks about, one of the biggest reasons to buy a home is you're going to be building equity. And simply what this means is that with each mortgage payment that you're making, some of that money goes towards your principal. And the principal is the amount that you actually owe on the house. If you're buying a $500,000 house and you owe $400,000, then a portion of your mortgage payment is going towards repaying that $400,000. And so if you have a 30-year mortgage, after the full 30 years, you own the home in full, meaning that when you sell the property, you get all of that money you paid into it back, plus the appreciation. And that's why people love homes, because it's really a great investment for them. And it's often many people's largest largest investment. Another great reason to buy a home is you're gonna be building your credit score, because with each mortgage payment to your lender, they're gonna see that, hey, you paid your mortgage on time. We really like this guy because he pays us our money back. And so your credit score is gonna be increasing because of your mortgage payments that you're paying on time, assuming you're doing so, which I recommend. Also, as I briefly mentioned, you're gonna be getting the appreciation that comes with a home. Just like we're seeing right now, where home values are up about 22% year over year, you're gonna be the one reaping the benefits of those rewards. And instead of having this property that's worth $500,000 last year, it's gonna be worth about $600,000 this year, which means just from buying this home a year ago at one price, you're now making 20% more just from having the home and living in it. Another great thing that people love about houses is being able to renovate it, being able to customize it, paint the rooms, knock out walls, build new shelves, and doing all the things that people really love to do to make the home their own and really fit their own personality. And something that people don't often think about is your interest payments on your mortgage are actually a tax write-off, meaning that a portion of the interest that you're paying every month is actually gonna go towards reducing your total tax burden at the end of the tax year. But now let's get into the cons of buying a home. And number one is that the opposite of appreciation is depreciation. And just like we saw with 2008, if you owned a home, that property lost a ton of value, probably around 40%, sometimes 50%, depending on what part of the country you lived in. That was a huge deal for people. Imagine having bought a home in 2007 for $500,000 and then realize in 2008 that it's only worth $250,000. So that's part of the risk of buying a home. Yes, you get the appreciation benefits, but you're also risking the possibility of losing money on the home if you were to hit some crazy real estate downturn like that. Another con is maintenance expenses. You're in charge of fixing everything and paying for it. Meaning if your AC goes out, you're gonna be paying $6,000, $8,000 for your new AC unit, and that can take a huge chunk out of your savings. Another expense that's gonna come with owning a home is property taxes. You may think the property is yours even if you don't have a mortgage on it, but trust me, try not to pay property taxes and see how long it takes for the government to come and seize the property from you. You're also gonna be paying a lot of expenses up front when you buy a home, because you're gonna be getting an inspection, you're gonna be paying for homeowners insurance, you're gonna be getting an appraisal, you're gonna have closing costs, fees to the lender, you're gonna have your down payment, which is thousands of dollars. And so the total cost to buying a home is significantly more than it is to rent a property. Even if it's the same property, renting it is gonna be a lot cheaper up front than buying. And lastly, you're gonna be paying a lot of money in interest up front. There's something called an amortization schedule. Even though you're paying 3% interest year over year, what the lender does is they actually front load that interest payment, meaning that you're gonna be paying the majority of your total interest over the life of the loan in the beginning of the loan. So especially that first year, the majority, sometimes 70 or 80% of your mortgage payment is going towards interest. So if you have a $2,000 mortgage payment, you may be paying $1,600 in interest and only $400 towards paying down your principal. Ouch. Okay, so now the big question, how do you make this decision? Which one is gonna be right for you? Well, here are the three tools that I mentioned that are gonna help you make this decision. Number one is you need to weigh the opportunity cost between buying and renting. For example, if you're gonna be buying a home for $500,000 and putting 20% down, you're gonna be spending $100,000 just on your down payment. So you need to weigh the cost of taking that $100,000 and putting it into real estate to get those benefits versus putting it into another investment like the stock market. And I'm even gonna help you out with that decision. According to the Case-Shiller Housing Index, between 1928 and 2013, residential real estate increased in value just 3.7% over that entire time period when adjusted for inflation. And the stock market returned 9.5%, almost triple in that same time period. So if these numbers hold true, you're way better off investing that $100,000 in the stock market and get that 9.5% return versus getting that 3.7% return. However, the answer is a bit more complicated than that. Because if you invest $100,000 in the stock market and you got that 9.5% return, you'd have a $9,500 return by the end of that year. And with real estate, it's not as simple because you're dealing with leverage, otherwise known as debt. Investing with leverage allows you to increase your returns a whole lot faster than by not using leverage. And the benefit to real estate is using leverage or debt is a whole lot less risky than using leverage in the stock market. So if you take that 3.7% return on residential real estate and apply it to this fictitious example that we're using of buying a $500,000 house with $100,000 down, you wouldn't just have a $3,700 return on your investment because you're not just spending $100,000. Yes, you're putting $100,000 down, but it's on a $500,000 property. So you're getting that 3.7% return on the entire $500,000, which gives you $18,500 $500 as a return by the end of the year. And that's almost double what you got with the stock market. Even though you got a higher percentage return, the actual amount returned is much greater because of leverage. And that's great and all, but you may think that this clearly shows that real estate is the better decision. But remember that there are much higher fees when investing in real estate, buying and selling real estate, than there are in the stock market. But to offset all of those fees, real estate and commercial real estate, especially as an asset class, have some of the biggest tax advantages of any asset class that's available. There are entire books, seminars, courses, podcasts, YouTube channels, etc., built for the sole purpose of helping you understand how you can use real estate to minimize your tax burden. Now, all of that's a bit out of the scope of this video, but I hope you can take this discussion and use it to help you determine the opportunity cost of buying versus renting in your scenario. Now, tool number 2 is super awesome and super easy because all you have to do is hit that subscribe button right there, and the YouTube overlords are going to be sending you a letter with keys to your new free home for being so generous. That's probably not going to happen, but it would be pretty nice though, wouldn't it? All right, but for real, the second tool is really cool. You're gonna like it because it's just a calculator that's gonna help you make this decision. And it's also one of the most comprehensive and easy to use calculators that I've found. All right, so we're just gonna jump into my computer real quick and I'll walk you through the calculator. So basically you're gonna get on here, you're gonna scroll down and you're gonna see that there's a ton of different options, all kinds of things that you're gonna wanna fill out. If you don't know the answer to some of these questions, because they do get into the nitty-gritty details of buying versus renting, just leave them at their defaults and that should be fine. But for us, we're gonna go and we're gonna slide this up to $500,000. Hold on, where's it at? 500, nope, not 50, $500,000. And what's gonna happen is depending on the numbers that you put into these different categories, you're gonna get a rent amount that if you can rent for less than this amount, you're gonna be better off renting versus buying. And so this is how you make your decision. So we're gonna use our same situation, $500,000. The average person stays in a property rental for 3 years. So we're gonna move that down from 9 years to 3 years, and you're gonna see that it's changing drastically the amount of rent per month that makes this situation work. Our mortgage details, I know right now, at least in my area, you can look in your specific market and find out what interest rates are local to you. But for me, right around 3.2% is the average. So we can move that. Let's say I'm gonna put 20% down. That's a great thing to do, 30-year mortgage. And then we can say, what does the future hold? What home growth or appreciation rate are we expecting to see over the next couple of years? Well, the average rate is 3%, so that's why they have that there. It's been crazy high this last year, 22%. But I don't expect that to continue year over year. So I would say let's leave it at 3%. And we could even change it to 5% if we want to be more aggressive. 3 to 5% is typically the range that we see. It's typically not this 22% thing. It's really nuts. As far as rent growth rate, this is the amount of money that you can expect your rent, if you're renting, to go up every year. So the average is about 2.5%. Your investment rate of return, basically if you were to take this money for your down payment and invest it elsewhere, what kind of rate of return would you be expecting? They have this down at 4%. I think 4% is a pretty good conservative amount. We could probably bump it up to 6%. Inflation rate, 2% is the average. We've seen 5.2% right now year over year, but that's also accounting for the deflationary period we saw after COVID. So really, if you look at the graph, we're right around that 2.2% still. What your property taxes are, you can dial those in, your tax rate. So you can put in, if you're in the 24% tax rate or whatever it's gonna be, you can put in the cost of buying a home, the cost of selling a home, your maintenance fees, homeowners insurance, all these different things. So cost of selling a home is going to be more, 6%. I would say 7%. Because you're gonna have about 1% in closing costs as well as 6% in agent fees, 3% to the buying agent, 3% to the selling agent. Cost of buying a home, I also estimate is about 5%, and that's because you're gonna be paying 3% typically as a down payment. That's what most people do. And then about 2% in closing costs and different fees. Maintenance renovations, 1%, I think that's a great average. About 0.5% or so for homeowners insurance is a good average. And you can even get on here and dial in your own monthly utilities, your common fees like HOAs and things like that. And then additional renting costs. So if you have a month's security deposit, if you have a broker's fee, if you have renter's insurance, those kind of things. Renter's insurance, for me at least, is much cheaper than that. It's about $10 a month, which would be about $120. So I'm gonna bump that down right about there. So what this is saying, after I've gone in and put all of my information, is that if we were considering buying a $500,000 house right here, if we can rent for less than $2,138 a month, then renting is better. But if we can't, then we should go and we should buy a home. So I'll put a link in the description for this calculator. Go on, fill out all of this information for yourself, and then you're gonna be able to get this answer and see what works best for you. And the third tool is something called the 5% rule. And what the 5% rule does is it helps you determine the unrecoverable costs of buying versus renting. And unrecoverable costs are simply just costs that you're gonna be spending and not getting back. The unrecoverable costs with renting are very simple because it's just your rent. If you're paying $2,000 in rent, well, that's your unrecoverable cost, $24,000 per year. Now, the unrecoverable costs for buying are a bit more complicated, but they're broken down into 3 different categories. And those are your maintenance costs, your property taxes, and your cost of capital. We can do a deep dive on this in another video, but for now, I'm gonna keep it pretty simple. So for maintenance costs, we're gonna assume an average maintenance cost of 1% of the value of the home per year. Do keep in mind that you won't actually be paying maintenance costs in averages because they're gonna come in chunks, like an AC unit goes out or a water heater. But 1% is a good rule of thumb to go by. We're also gonna be using 1% as the national average in property taxes. You can dial this in depending on your area, but we're just gonna use 1% as an average. All right, and third, the cost of capital. What the cost of capital is it's just the amount that it's gonna cost you to have these additional funds to buy the house since you're financing it. You can also think of it as the cost of debt. And to determine the cost of capital, you're just gonna look at your interest rate, which here in July 2021 is right around 3%, regardless of where you are in the country. And again, you can dial in these numbers to your specific area if you would like. So with the 3% cost of capital, the 1% to property taxes, and the 1% to maintenance fees, you have your 5%. Now I'll show you how this helps you. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take your purchase price, which in our case is $500,000, and you're gonna multiply it by 5% and then divide by 12, since there's 12 months in the year. Crunch those numbers and you're gonna get $2,083, and this shows you your monthly unrecoverable cost for buying a home. So in layman's terms, if you buy a $500,000 house with these numbers and these assumptions, you're gonna be spending $2,083 a month on average. That is unrecoverable, meaning you're not gonna get that money back. And so this helps because now we can say, okay, well, if I can rent a similar house for $2,083 or less, then I'm getting a great deal and I should rent. But if it's gonna cost me more than $2,083 to rent a similar house, then I should probably buy a house because that's gonna ultimately save me more money. And you can also work these numbers in reverse. So say there's a property that you wanna rent and it's $2,500 a month. What you're gonna do is you're gonna multiply the $2,500 rent by 12 to get your yearly rent, and then divide that by 5% or 0.05. Plug those numbers into the calculator and you're gonna get $600,000. And so what this tells us is that by renting a house for $2,500, it would be financially the equivalent of buying a $600,000 house, and your monthly unrecoverable costs would be the same. Let me know what questions you have down below in the comments. Thanks for watching. Click this video right here and I'll see you in the next video.